You know what's funny about today's topic is that estate planning for me was triggered the first time April and I went away on vacation together.
Why is that?
Because it was like, oh shit, if the plane goes down and we're on it together, right? Like, it's that moment of like, I mean, planes really rarely go down, right? Like, I think it's like 99.9, whatever. It's insanely high odds that you're going to safely arrive and come back. But you have this, I don't know why I still have it in my head. I'm like, oh shit, what happens, right? The plane goes down and both parents are gone, and we didn't have a will at that point. Welcome, everybody, to another week of Wealth Wisdom, where we're helping you build wealth and legacy.
Companies are like an organism trying to survive.
It's always a risk when you're investing in a company that's purely tied to someone's brand.
45% of Americans have gone into debt for a Disney trip.
Oh, I am more nervous when I fly without my kids than I am with.
100%.
Because in my head, I think, oh my God, what's going to happen to them? Like that, you know what I mean? Like that's,
Yeah.
how tough would it be to make it in life without parents, right? So.
Completely. And, it's all those things embracing in your head of, like, who's going to take care of them? Do I have everything set? Like, it's like being a parent isn't enough responsibility. And then I think the level of feeling that responsibility, that weight of it, for me, like, magnifies when April and I go away together. And it's, God forbid something happened, So I don't know if Eric, have you and Britt gone anywhere yet? Solo?
Oh, I saw.
But not
Yeah,
right.
not without the babe.
Yeah,
Kid
right.
was just
And he's
born.
coming to Italy with
Yeah.
us, too. So we're all going down together.
We're 3 months in, right?
3 months in. Like almost 4 months in. I don't think.
How did the trip to Florida? The Florida flight and everything, he was good?
Yeah, on the way there, slept the whole time. It was amazing.
it's
Yeah,
amazing.
plane, white noise, put him right to sleep. But then on the way back, like at night, that's when he's like grumpy and wants to like walk around and stuff. But you can't do that on a plane, so I would like literally had to bounce him for an hour straight.
Mm-hmm.
But which is fine. He screamed a little bit, but no big deal.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Nowadays, everyone's got headphones. Like, you don't have to feel as bad about bringing a kid on a plane. Like, it'll be fine.
Yeah, everyone's got the noise canceling,
Yeah.
whatever phone, whatever brand. It's true. It's true.
Yeah. But back to what you were talking about, like, everyone should just channel that, like, the fear of, hey, we're flying on our own. What's going to happen to the kids if we go down? Like, they should just channel that because, like, driving a car every day, you're at, like, a higher risk. So you got to channel that energy and go get your estate plan done.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like that's so this was for me. It was about 4 years ago. So I was already late to the game, and we had a trip to Aruba planned as the first time we did a big trip since the kids were born,
Right.
like outside of like our honeymoon. And,
No kids, right?
Yeah, no kids, 0 kids. My parents had agreed to watch them. They were going to stay at our house for the week, and get them off the bus, do all those things. Like, I'm saints, right? Like, incredible. But then I was like, oh my God, the plane. Like, what happens, right? And it goes down. We only have life insurance, right? Everything else is kind of like, I don't know what happens. Who's going to take care of them? Are they going to transfer schools? Do they have to move to, out of state because that's where April's family's from, Or are my parents do they want to be raised by, like, all these questions? And it's a whirlwind. So, and that was only a month away when I realized all of this. So I didn't have time to even make the estate plan and do anything. It was too little, too late, and thank God, nothing happened. We were back and fine. But then right after that trip,
We're back.
right after that trip, it was, oh shit, let's get shit going. Excuse me, I never swear. We're gonna bleep that out. Bleep that out.
That's all right. You're human.
Yeah.
It's good to throw a good F-bomb or in there every now and again.
Have you guys ever felt like this? Like, Bill, like, when did you do a will? And then I want to dive into the basics of everyone, what they should be thinking.
So
about.
yeah, I mean, I should have done it a long time ago, but I did. I mean, I should have done it basically right when you first had a kid.
Yeah.
That's really like when you should do it. But I did it like 4 or 5 years ago. So, at that point I had multiple children. But yeah, no, I just did all the wills, picking who would be taking care of things like that. I probably actually want to get into like more detail of my will and stuff like that. My will and trust and things along those lines. I kind of just figured like all my assets and investments would be kind of like liquidated in a sense, and then just put into the trust, just because like real estate, and things along those lines. I know like financially they'd be taken care of, but like just between like the life insurance that like my wife and I have, between our accumulation, things like that, like they'd be fine in terms of like school and whoever took care of them and stuff like that. It would not be financially burdened. Yeah, there's plenty of stuff there.
Yeah.
Between all those things to kind of get them through adulthood. But yeah, it's more just like picking like, okay, like who's going to take care of them? You don't want to inconvenience them. The person who's taking care of them, like that's a tough choice, right? Because you're like, all right, I have 4 kids. So you don't want to split them up, right? So,
No. Right.
Whoever takes care of them, that's really going to upend their life. Like that's going to be a huge responsibility. Do they have the house to handle it? Right? Do they have the, what I mean? There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of variables to consider.
Everyone in my family, I mean, my parents are still healthy, but they're in their late 70s at this point. So that would be very tough for them over the next 10, 15 years. I got a 2-year-old, right? So realistically, that's another 20 years, right? If you take college into consideration of care. And my siblings all have kids, right? So they all have their own kids, and it would be tough. You know what I mean? For anybody who was, and my wife's sister lives in Connecticut, so that would be really upend something like that. And I don't think she doesn't have the space, right? So it's like all these things you got to consider.
Right.
Obviously,
Right.
no way you do it is going to be easy, right, for anybody. So
Well, I think that like there's 2 things to me. I think like the thought of all of this and these heavy decisions make it very hard for people to take the first step towards estate planning. And then Eric, I don't know about you. I feel like there's this myth of, well, estate planning and trusts and wills, especially trusts, are for, reserved for the ultra wealthy, which I think is a huge myth. And I really want to like let everyone listening right now, no, it's not for that. Have you ever heard that from clients or people you've talked to?
I mean, I feel like that is a general kind of thought process out there, but like a basic will is not that expensive. And then opening trust accounts, basically the whole point of an estate plan is to make sure, hey, if something happens to you, family's taken care of and things transition smoothly. If you don't have this stuff set in place, it's a huge mess. And you don't you don't want people's memory of you to be like this big mess that's left behind. You want things to transition smoothly. You want everyone taken care of.
Yeah.
But yeah, will is pretty simple. You can get that done. Trust account.
You can do your own will.
Makes sense for everybody.
You can do your own will.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can just write it on a piece of paper. It's best to get it notarized, right? You know what I mean?
Sign it.
And it's also good for someone else to have it, so that if I don't know, your house burns down or something like that, right? Someone says, "Oh, hey, I got a copy." You know what I mean? Of what their wishes were. So,
well, Bill,
The amount of
sorry, Eric.
I'm just saying, we've had so many clients do a lot of this stuff just like on their deathbed. Like they're like, "Oh my God, I'm sick now. We're in the hospital." They're rushing to add beneficiaries to IRA accounts. They're updating wills, all this stuff like last second. It's if you just took the time right now, you'd set yourself up.
Yeah.
It's very messy when you do that.
Well, so Bill, what are the basics? Like what's like basic block and tackling that everyone needs?
I mean, you want to have a will in place, right? Because that's just all that's doing is putting down your wishes, right, of what you want and who you want what to go to and things along those lines. So that's really important, right? So that's, if you have kids, you could talk about, who you would prefer to be their guardians, and you know what I mean, things like that. Because then then they can get into a fight, right? You know what I mean? If different family members want them for their own reasons, that can come into play, right? Because there is, sadly, right, there's some financial stuff there, right? So if people think like, oh, well, now I'm in charge of the money for these children, like, they're supposed to have to spend for their benefit, but like those people could say like, well, the kids are benefiting because I'm spending money on this, right, or something like that, even though there might be like an ulterior motive for whatever that is. So, you want to have that in place and have someone that you trust to take care of it, because there's going to be certain people that, I mean, listen, there's some people who are really good with money. There's some people who aren't. There's some people who...
Well, I was just going to ask that. Like, can the money person, so if someone's managing the money, does that have to be the same person as the guardian, assuming you have kids? Like,
no, doesn't have to be. So you can have someone who's taking care of the kids, but then you can have someone who's the fiduciary on the account for the money, you know what I mean, handling the money. Probably a good way to go about it, actually, so that there's a little check and balance there.
Okay.
If you have that ability, right? Some people don't have that ability. They only have one person they can go to, so that's how it has to be handled. But it's nice to have maybe I come from a big family, so I would have multiple people kind of looking at stuff.
Right. So like some person in your family who's exceptional with money and can be responsible, you'd be like, hey, you're the galler guy.
Yeah,
for
just
that,
make sure that they're being prudent with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, like, hey, you're listing in the will what these assets are for, and you just want to make sure that that's what it's used for, right? And not for, again, I don't know, just random expenses. You can make a case that like anything's for the, like a good arguer, so to speak, can make the case that anything's good for the child, right? But you want to make sure that it's within the wishes of what you have drawn up. So you want to have that will in place that has those, that last will and testament, right? And then you want to have the trusts. If you do have assets that you're giving, that's where you want all that stuff paid into. And then you'll have a fiduciary over that trust, you know what I mean, who helps push that money out to the places it needs to go. And that person and you want that person to be able to work hand in hand with the guardian, if it's not the same person, to take care of your family.
Okay. What about a power of attorney? Is that necessary as well? Or what does that provide?
That's going to allow someone to make decisions on your behalf. So you're going to have a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, right? Healthcare proxies, all those things that if you're in a state of incapacitation, right, and can't make decisions.
Yeah.
You get in a car accident, heart attack. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like there's a thousand things that could lead to that state. I know everyone thinks that they're gonna like live forever and stuff like that, but it happens very, very quickly. And you want to be prepared so that if something does happen, your decisions are what are dictating how stuff is handled.
Right.
So you want to have that stuff in place so that actually makes the power of attorney's job a lot easier too, because really they're just signing off and kind of making the things go to work, in a sense, like making your decisions go to work. So that's why that stuff's really important to have. So yeah, you want to have a power of attorney, a durable power of attorney in case of something happens, right? Cognitive, mental, and any of those things happen, those things are being taken care of. Healthcare proxy, so if you're in a state of incapacitation, right, someone can help make healthcare decisions for you. All those things are important. Probably, I would suggest doing them all at once, right? And great thing to do is if you don't know, like, hey, just sit down with someone who's an estate planner, who not only puts these documents in place, but also, right, has seen the other side when they don't do any of that stuff, and like the mess it occurs and the financial cost it occurs.
Right.
Now what's happening when you don't do that is that lawyer, he or she ends up getting having to do a lot more work for you, right? Because they have to go and contest the courts and, various other things that are labor intensive and time intensive. And of course, that stuff that adds up significantly. So when you have these things in place, it saves a lot of money and pain and time on that end. So it's selfless in the sense that you're doing something to save everybody else, what can essentially be a real pain for everybody who's handling your stuff.
Yeah, right. I think part of the hardest part is probably, who is going to be the guardian of my kids?
Yeah.
How is that? I feel like that's a very hot topic amongst married couples, and it's like my side's better, your side. Like, how does that go, Eric? You guys just had a baby boy. How have you and Britt thought about this? I could share my story too.
Her side's better. That one's not even a debate.
So that's an easy one for you. I don't.
Oh, God. It's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers in the Ben's house.
Boom! Oh boy. Yeah,
but
I mean,
it's definitely
How do people choose? Are there, do you guys advise people on that?
I mean, it's a personal choice at the end of the day, and it's the things that Bill talked about, right? Capacity, who can handle it, and then you think about disruption to your kids' lives, right? And
so location and
same thing. But I mean, we can steer someone some way, but that's up to them, right?
No, of course. I just didn't know if there were a framework that you'll kind of walk them through as their, and I guess is that something?
Not to mention, those people can refuse, right? You know what I mean? Even if you do, assign them guardianship,
Well, I would have to imagine you have to talk to them and get their sign off, right?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No, you can just put it in you know what I mean? In the
really?
will. I mean, it's probably something that you want to talk to, right? You just say, hey, just giving you a heads up. Right?
So you're saying legally you don't have to, but you definitely should.
Yeah, because what if they say no, absolutely not. Something happens to you and there's no way that we can handle having more kids. You know what I mean? More people in the household.
Yeah.
We don't want to. What if it's a situation where their kids are older, right? And they're thinking we're looking forward to having, an empty house or something like that. I don't know if a lot of parents want that, but that it would be a severe disruption, right?
Yeah.
So.
Well, is that where life insurance can come into play? Can you have enough where this is not going to be a burden for that person?
Maybe financially.
Yeah. Okay.
That's just one aspect of, you know what I mean, the whole thing, though, right? There's a lot more to it.
Yeah. No amount of money is going to make additional 4 kids not become a burden, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, just think about the time. Just your whole life would get up.
Totally.
And you like to do certain things. Well, now those things are not necessarily on the table because you have, I don't know.
Now you've got 7.
You got a 3-year-old all of a sudden, and your oldest is 14. You don't, you have a, or excuse me, your youngest is 14 years old, a kid who can practically, quote unquote, take care of themselves, right? If you're not around, now it's you have to have someone there at all times. So,
what about trusts? Is a trust is a part of all this? You already mentioned that, Eric. Do you suggest setting up a trust right away when a child is born, or is that reserved for trust fund kids? Or what is that stigma around trust fund kids, and then how does trust really come into play?
Yeah, I mean I don't always it's more specific. Yeah, I don't always suggest someone set up a trust immediately when a child's born. I don't know if you're more into doing that, Bill, but no, typically.
I'll let you finish, but I'll tell you why.
No, you could take it because I don't usually suggest that.
So I mean, here's the thing: is why it's good to have, because if you do have life insurance, right? Okay, and let's say the money does get paid out. So let's say you get $1.5 million in life insurance, right? You say, hey, I want to cover our mortgage, I want to cover my kids' college, and I want to cover some of my salary, right? You know what I mean? For a certain amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's probably, if you talk to 100 people about life insurance, those three things would probably be on most people's minds, right? There's other stuff you should consider, but that's probably the three most important things, right? Education for your child, covering some like your mortgage, having a place for people to live, right, is important, and then of course covering maybe your income because your spouse would be burdened with that loss of income, right? So those things are probably very prevalent for most people.
Yeah.
Now you put that in place because, number one, it can protect from creditors and things along those lines. Like that's an important aspect of it. But then also, you want that trust to go in place because now, like, you have a young child, they don't know what to do with the money, right? And then if it doesn't go into the right hands, well, then again, you have someone who potentially is handling that money and maybe can squander it, you know what I mean, in a manner. There's no checks and balances, right? You know what I mean, or anything like that. So now all of a sudden someone might be taking care of the money and now they're doing things that might not be in the best interest of what, was designed to do. Whereas if a trust is in place, the money's in there. Like I said, you have maybe multiple people. There's some, who are looking at it to make sure the money is being spent in the best interest of the child.
Right. Okay.
And so that's the thing, right? Because, and I've had cases where clients are husband and wife, okay? Maybe one of them has had mental addiction issues, various things, right? You know what I mean? In the past. And if they were to die, they want the money to go to a trust who's then handled, right, by a sibling, a friend, an attorney, an advisor, right? Because they don't want that spouse who might have had addiction issues in the past or something along those lines to burn through that money. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things to be considered. The trust is it acts as another protection mechanism to, again, align with your goals and in your best interest in mind for what you want to have done with the money. So that's, you know what I mean? That's the purpose of the trust and why you want it in place. Because it further goes into leading out what your wishes want it to be. So what is your intention for this money? That's what having that trust in place, again, provides more bumpers and guidelines on how that works. When you
I was just going to say that,
it's a free-for-all. You know what I mean? That's the thing. The money is a free-for-all if you don't have those things in place. So
with a trust, you can create, kind of creative rules around how the money is to be used. At what points in time does the kid get access to that? What hurdles they may have to overcome to get that? Or what's that book? The book you sent me, Dancing with Analysts.
Yeah.
That's fantastic example, right?
Yeah. Yep. He puts some incentives right in place so that if he and you can do it, right? You do it.
What is that? He gets like $1 million, right? And then if he can invest the money properly, he gets another huge windfall.
Yeah. If he can invest it and get a rate of return of 15% on his money, then he's able to, then get, I forget what it is.
It's like 30 million.
5 million or 15 million, or something like that, right? But if he doesn't, like, he can take the money and do whatever he wants with it.
Right.
But then that other money just goes away, right? It's in a charitable remainder trust and just gets donated, if it doesn't happen. So, yeah. And that's just one of the many things that you can do, right, within those trusts. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot to consider. Eric, have you, for life insurance, as people are listening, I think that the number one question is, how much do I need?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is 10 times your yearly salary. And for me personally, I've been thinking about it. I mentioned it to you guys today. Like, I only have $1 million right now, so I definitely need to add more. Obviously, we just had the baby who's now 3 months old. Definitely plan to expand the family. Yeah, maybe 2 under 2. We'll see.
There you go.
But
I'm 5.
yeah, so like if I'm gonna have 3 kids eventually,
5 is good.
Yeah.
Get a school bus.
Cost of private college is only going up, right? Inflation rate of like 8% a year.
Did you see that?
Cover that.
BU's tuition is $98,000 a year.
Yeah. So honestly, my estimate probably
seems reasonable.
Low.
Yeah. Northeastern. I just talked to
board.
Yeah, all in. I just talked to another friend whose kid just got into college. Sorry for this tangent. I have to. I mean, this is insane. But it's like Northeastern for year one with this like program. You have to go to London exchange for the first semester or something. $96,000. It's just insane.
Yeah, I mean, it's an insane amount of money to think about. It's a good racket, right? You just stick kids in a cement box, right, for living, right? And then
We're going to have another episode all about college and ROI.
Professor 10 hours, you know what I mean? A couple of professors, 10 hours, you get 10 hours of time for a student.
Yeah, that's another episode coming up. ROI on college.
Private education has to have like a massive diminishing return with the prices now, right?
It's shocking how many people are still all in on it. But
yeah, because the public schools have amazing networks too. So it's not like a lot of people argue, oh, the private schools and networks are better. I will say though, anecdotally, my siblings that went to Ivy League schools, when you're applying to jobs, your resume definitely gets moved to the front. Like you get that interview.
yeah.
Another anecdote, actually.
Certainly. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? Certain people
Yep.
where of like,
But even
hey, this person went here. I'll talk to them before talking. Well, you know.
Yep.
Even like Providence College versus Ivy's, though. Britt sent me the Brown career fair, and then my younger brothers at Providence College sent me the PC career fair list. Like the Brown career fair had like all these amazing like Fortune 500 companies, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft. Who else is there, right? And Providence College was just all local, like a lot of local businesses, like financial institutions, life insurance.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was, but they weren't hitting any of the big names. None of the big names wanted to show up there. It wasn't worth their time. So, but either way, it's just like.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it from their perspective. It's the process. Like these kids typically have higher SAT scores. They typically a little more, at least earlier in life, like we're more driven, things like that.
Right.
And I think again, the cream of the crop's always going to rise. So even kids who are in schools who maybe aren't, you know, quote unquote as elite, are still going to do well, right? But fewer of them are going to do well, right? You know what I mean? Where probably
I have so many opinions on this.
Basis, you know.
We are definitely doing the next episode on this topic.
Yeah.
Sorry, we cut you off. Go back to.
So I'm gonna assume my kid's is gonna, you know, he's got a bunch of my genetics, so he's not gonna be that smart. So I need to have all the money there for his college. He's not getting any scholarship. So yeah, but if I have 3 kids, so I need like $500,000 per kid. So that's 1.5 million. I want to, you know, we'll probably upgrade our house at some point. So I want another $1 million at least for that. If something happens to me, I want the house to be paid off. So now we're at 2.5 mil. And then plus, if I add like salary on that. So let's say conservatively, I need $3 million in life insurance if I want to make sure the family's taken care of.
Yeah.
And I would assume it's a similar situation for most people. So it's, definitely something to consider.
Life insurance, can you just get any amount of money you want? Or is it a factor of how much you're making today? Like what is involved in that? And I'm like, there's 2 types of, you should go into the 2 types of insurance as well, whole life and term. But I was
going to say there's wants, needs, and then there's what you can afford.
Yeah. I just did term life.
We'll go off on that.
Yeah, I don't know. What did you end up going with, Bill, when you did your life insurance?
So I probably also have to like review that as well. But like, I mean, I just looked at, okay, this is what my mortgage was. I want to take care of schooling for the kids and just have a little left over. And so I think like right now I have $1.5 million. But I also, when I added to it, I also had more assets, things like that. So I was like, all right, I can self-insure and in some cases. So that was a product of it. But that was what was important to me. You know, my wife and I talked like, listen, we would like to probably, if something happened to one of us, right, she'd probably want to take some time off or something like that. Just
oh sure, yeah,
to handle it all, right, the psychological aspect of it. Being self-employed, I really wouldn't have that. Like, as terrible as that sounds, I mean, I wouldn't have that ability to like just walk away for 3 months. You know what I mean? Or something like that. Like I wouldn't be able to do it. My business would fail. So
yeah.
So that a little different, but that's how I determined it. It was a school, like education, mortgage, and some replacement cost of my, so now looking at where we're at with 4 kids, I mean, as we're having this conversation, I'm thinking in my head, yeah, probably I need to look at that a little bit closer. You know what I mean? So,
well, I think that's something to highlight too. It's like estate planning is you gotta look at it. It's not like one and done and never look at it again.
oh yeah, it's nice to have something in place, and then you want to look at it every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, stuff changes. People who you might have trusted in certain situations may have fallen out of favor. You know what I mean? Things like that, right? So you see these things that certain people do, and you go, I don't know if I'd want them raising my kids actually looking at that. You know what I mean? Or something like that, right? Or so those are the things you got to consider, right? And that's why, yeah, like every 3 to 5 years is a kind of a good barometer on when you should be reviewing it, or at least having a discussion about it and saying, yeah, when we put this in place, is this still what we want? Right? You know what I mean? Is that still what we think is the best scenario?
Yeah.
So yeah, those are things that you want to look at. And I mean, hey, if another thing too is looking at the cost, right, of stuff. Eric's saying those things and that he wants to have covered. But I mean, if you look at how inflation, right, has treated
Prices are going to change.
because you buy life insurance on what those costs are if you were to pass away tomorrow, right? So you look at it, you say, if I were to die tomorrow, what is this stuff going to cost us? You know what I mean? Something like that. That's where you're buying it. You're almost buying it thinking that like you're going to sign the papers and you're going to walk outside and get hit by a bus. You know what I mean? So that's how you should be thinking when buying the coverage amount. And then after that, right, yeah, stuff can go up significantly. So you may look back and you say, holy smokes, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, stuff's a lot more than I thought, so we do need to add some. And then, you know.
Egg prices just went up to $10 a carton. It's time to reassess.
Yeah. Right? Kids eat a lot of scrambled eggs, you know?
They won't stop.
No, I know. So, no, but it is just something to think about.
And it depends on your where you live too. A cost of living, depending on the state you are, it's going to have variable costs on raising your kids, and all of that comes into play.
Oh yeah.
So,
You know, but then again, like all that stuff, you can add up what you want. You can look at everything and say, hey, this is what I want covered. Mm-hmm. But then you got to, when you go to get the policy, right? How much is it going to cost, right? So cost is then going to be. That's going to affect things. So if you say like, oh, geez, I wanted to get a 30-year term, right, or something like that, and now all of a sudden it's like, oh, geez, that came in, like when I got my term policy, I think it was 30 years, $1 million, and it was, call it $852, right, for the year.
Yeah, okay.
My wife's was a little bit less. She's younger than me, and obviously females, tend to live longer, so they get a little more benefit of the doubt there. But
yeah, they're not as risky.
Yeah, right. So, but that was what at the time. But what if $858? To me, I was like, all right. Actually, the number didn't really matter, right? I was like, whatever, I'm going to pay it no matter what. But like for some people, that $858, that might be too much. You know what I mean?
A lot.
And they might be saying, hey, I can only afford. $40 a month or something like that. So then you gotta say, okay, based on my health, based on everything that I have going on, what is $40 a month going to give me?
Well, and can you shop this around?
Maybe I go with a 20-year, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to get more coverage, So.
And you can shop it around, right? You can not all insurance companies are created equal, I'm assuming.
I mean, you'd never want to go with an insurance company who only uses their own products, right? So you want someone who's like, all right, I'm going to go through 100 different companies and I'm going to get the best quote for you, right? So when it comes to financial security of the insurance company, you want to make sure they're around, right? You know what I mean? And then cost and things like that. You know what I mean? So,
we don't even sell insurance to clients, correct? Right?
No, we just make recommendations on how much to need, things like that, and then kind of go into and then speak with a broker and say, listen, this is what our client is, in the market for. We're not in, they're going to say, oh, I got these fancy products, I got this, and it's like, whoa. No. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't mind being that person who's their fiduciary and kind of says, like, that's not what we're looking for. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're looking for a straight coverage product. We're looking at things along those lines because There's whole life, which has cash value. There's a lot of different insurance products. A lot of times they're pushed as wealth accumulation products. Everyone's got varying understanding and varying, we'll call it ideas, right, about how they work.
Especially whole life, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, insurance is, you can have someone talk about an insurance product like it's the greatest thing in the world and how there's tax-free benefits and how you can do all these things with it and still have accumulation and still things along those lines. I would argue about some of the sustainability. A lot of times they say, oh, this is a AAA rated or a AA rated insurance company. It's like, okay, but they pull their products all the time. They stay AA rated because if something is unsustainable, they just cut it. You know what I mean? So it might not have the benefits that they're talking about. Or, right, the illustration they show, they might have forgot a few variables in there that happen to happen in real life, right? You know what I mean? Once certain things happen, certain financial, issues or things like that happen in the market. Now all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, we didn't think of that, and everything blew up. You know what I mean? That they were, quoting for you. So like, yeah, again, depending on what you're looking for, but like, let's just say, the average person just needs pure coverage, right? So they use accumulation in their 401k, their savings, brokerage accounts, 403b, whatever it might be, Roth accounts. That's where their wealth accumulation is. They're using insurance strictly as a pure coverage need, right? Mm-hmm. So, we would go to them and say, go to an insurance broker, say, hey, this is really what we're looking for. You know what I mean? And things along those lines, and then trying to determine from there, right? Okay, does the cost meet what we're looking for, and is the time, right, of coverage meet what we're looking for? So,
yeah. So, all of it really works into the financial plan as a whole. And you guys are really working hand in hand with the estate attorney to make all this happen.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm hearing.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Because if something happens, right, we want to be there to help make sure those wishes are granted and become a realization. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So if it's something where that person wants their kids' college, we want to make sure that they're in position to have their college taken care of.
Yeah.
Not
for sure.
Right? The most important thing is we don't want that person to have like a financial tsunami, right? You know what I mean? Where everything's like devastated. We want to emotionally, psychologically, they're going to be in a tough spot already. Like, we want to make sure financially they're not in a tough spot, right? So that stuff's
totally
taken care of. They're going to have enough problems, right? You know what I mean? Enough issues and things like that in other places. Unfortunately, we can't do a lot. We could provide some comfort and stuff like that, but we want to just make sure from a financial perspective that they're not they're not devastated, right? It's like, okay, financially, still in good shape, still everything's good. You know what I mean?
No, it really is the responsible thing to do. You got to do it. Yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up. I think I don't know if you guys would add anything right now. Final thoughts on this, but I think that for anyone listening, I think it's probably the best thing you can do if you can afford. And there's various options. It doesn't have to be a $10,000 cost up front. There's far cheaper options to do it. And there's basic plans, and then there's levels to the whole thing.
That's 100%. And a good estate planning attorney will take you through that.
Yeah.
Too, right? Like, they'll have, quote unquote packages, right? You know what I mean? So it's like, oh, do you want a will? The basic will is this. More like maybe a more detailed will is this. If you want to add trust, if you want to add, power of attorney, things along those lines, the cost would obviously increase.
But at the bare bones level, like, this is an affordable thing that people should do and can do.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah. Again, it's just like life insurance. It's a selfless act, right? Mm-hmm. Because you're taking a lot of burdens off of whoever's going to take care of this stuff for you, right? Yeah. If you don't do it, it's a mess, right? You know what I mean? In terms of...
Oh, yeah, you're stuck in probate for years.
Courts trying to get... Yeah, it's a lot, right? You know what I mean? So And that can be really harmful for the kids. And if you think about it this way too, if something were to happen and now someone's taking care of your kids, and now all of a sudden it's a financial burden on them because money is being stuck in places, it just creates it's a big mess. So it's something that, again, if you don't know where to start, just set up a meeting. Most lawyers most estate planners will have a free consult. Like some of them will charge your money, but there's a gaggle of them who will do it for a free consult just to kind of do it. That gets the ball rolling with ideas. Then all of a sudden you start putting some pen to paper, you come back to them, you know what I mean, and get it done. And again, you can start with just a simple will, and maybe if that's what you can afford at the moment, you can add on a trust like a year or two later. You can do these things to maybe make it a little bit more affordable and really just make sure that your heirs are taken care of. And even if you don't have kids, right, and it's just that you might not have kids and you just want your money to be handled, in the right manner. I heard of someone whose brother, no kids, he died, done very well for himself and things like that, but he died with no will, no nothing. He had a live-in girlfriend. Live-in girlfriend had expenses, right? You know what I mean, with him, because they almost operated like they were married. She dies, but she's not next of kin, right? You know what I mean? So everything then went to the sister, right? And then they're arguing, I spent a bunch of money on this house, and I should be entitled to certain things like that. So it's even little things like that you're going to be, you know what I mean, want to have in place, because you just don't expect. Nobody expects to die of a heart attack. You know what I mean? But it happens, So. And every day, right, that risk of death increases.
Oh my God!
I know it doesn't sound right, but every day you're alive, you're
we're all dying.
Or a riskier proposition to die. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So that's.
Yep. Health is wealth. I keep saying that over and over. But that was great. I think that wraps it up today. I think if you guys are listening, you're still listening to the show right now, give us a like, a follow, subscribe, share, all that stuff. And also leave a comment. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them. Next week, we have an exciting guest with us. She is an investment banker. And so if you are a business owner listening to this, wondering when to buy, how to raise money, how to sell your company, it'll be a great episode. So looking forward to that, having Rudy on the show. And thanks again for listening. See you guys.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.